Respected Professor Mohan Gopal, my colleagues and students. I consider today a very important day for us because we are very lucky that we are going to get an opportunity to learn from and interact from one of the most prominent scholars in the area of legal theory and practice. I, in fact, heard a lot and I knew Professor Mohan Gopal from my CDS days onwards. In fact, I really felt envy of him when his own teacher and former chairman of Center for Development Studies, Professor N. Madhav Menon, talked so high of him. And I think the kind of tribute that one could ever think of, getting such high level from our own teachers is not a rare thing. So I, in fact, envied, in fact, time and again, he wanted to kind of CDS to put more effort and energy into learning law and economics and even opening a program, which somehow it didn't happen. That's a different issue. But nonetheless, a person's name repeatedly used to come was none other than Professor Mohan Gopal. And I think that when I know that is not because of the personal relation, but because it's a richly deserved recognition. Because if you look at what he is as an academician, having exposure to prominent premier academic institutions in the country and abroad, getting educated in Delhi University, and later moving to Harvard and doing PhD over there. Then later having the teaching engagement in Georgetown University, National University of Singapore, among others, and having exposure to influence the global thinking process by engaging by working with the World Bank. While the same we were saying in the morning that during that time they used to go and teach in the universities as adjunct faculty, which he has that provision that they had his love for teaching. Even without remuneration, he kind of used to work in the universities as adjunct faculty. And as an institution builder, he was the Vice Chancellor of National Law School, Bangalore. Later, he was the Vice Chancellor of the National Juridical Academy that trains the judges in the country. It's not a small thing. I think getting an opportunity to teach and train and groom and shape the thought process of the key decision makers. After all, they who ultimate world in our country, whether we have executive, legislature, but ultimately it is the judiciary, and influencing them is not a small achievement. I can go on about him, in terms of his. So I think I will, because in the world of Siri, in the world of Google and AI, I don't think that any kind of introduction is needed. But at the same time, I'm inclined to believe that introducing a person at the prominence of having the prominence of Professor Mohan Gopal is not an easy task. I'm so happy, sir, when I asked you to come over and interact with our faculty. And you know that as economists, we are someone who is professing the dismal science. We are always more negative than less positive. And also, when I invited you, it is not out of any altruism, with self-interest after all. As an institution builder, you can really appreciate why I was selfish in that. We have got 3 departments here: law, economics, and commerce. And I hope we will have some opportunity to interact all of them. We have got 3 of them in our law department. And we are thinking that we are not exploiting the potential of these colleagues to the extent that I should, and what the society needs. So I thought, in fact, also I must say to you that you are, I think Professor Vijay Kumar, we were talking there about him, colleague, and he was also talking very high of you. I told that he only told me that you are in Trivandrum. I thought you were abroad. I thought. So I remember him now, because now I would like you to be with us and associate with us. That is the
I said that the selfishness which I would like to be public about it rather than private. So thank you very much with a lot of appreciation and great expectation and gratitude. I welcome you on behalf of the GIFT community, and I'm very happy that you are going to talk about something different ways of understanding Indian Constitution, the challenges for public finances. This reminds me of what Jairam Ramesh told last year. Public understanding of public finance is big zero. We all know Constitution, but understanding of Constitution. Even I told you in the morning, even I, whatever socialism is done away with the Constitution. So I think interacting with you on this basic important thing. I think the topic that you have chosen for today's thing, I think I apparently very basic, but I think it's very important. I think on behalf of all of my gathered here, online and offline, I welcome you once again, and kindly please deliver your.
Thank you, sir, Dr. KJ Joseph, for a very gracious introduction, which I don't think I deserve. About my teacher, Professor Menon, who we all remember, I think I must put his positive comments about me in context. I've known him for many years, from 1973 when he first taught me till his passing. And during this entire period, I've never heard him say anything negative about anyone. He was a teacher in that real sense. Whoever you presented in front of him, he will look and find only what is positive about that person. And he's blind to the negatives. He will find only the positive, and then he will nurture that positive. And that's what he did with me. That's what he did with everyone. And so if anyone who interacted with him, he always praised. And so I think I begin paying my tribute to my teacher. And thank you, sir, for bringing his personality into that. Ultimately, that's the true essence of a teacher, that you bring the best out of people. And everyone has, maybe they have negative quality aspects which are negative, but everyone has some great talent, something very positive, and it's simply that it has not had the environment in which it could flourish. So thank you for that. And I would like to then second compliment the Honorable Director for such a dynamic approach, looking for new opportunities, new areas, building, thinking, reaching out to me, and telling me I must come and share my thoughts. Frankly, I've come here more to learn than to share anything. But I want to compliment that, because I've been in that position myself as director, now Vice Chancellor of the National Law School. And we get so overwhelmed by administrative work that we completely get killed, our academic interest and our academic dynamism. There's no time. We are always worried about so many, administrative issues, needless and important. So that you have a director who finds time to reach out to academics and call them here, I think you're fortunate to have such a director. So thank you, sir, for this opportunity. I'd like to ask, what is the rough time schedule, sir, for us? So we should have some interaction. Now it's 11:45. Yeah. And including interaction? No, we can. I'll speak about around that time, and then we can have an interaction. We should end by 1:15. 1:15. Okay, let's say 1 o'clock. Let's do maximum 1:15, because people you're all too young to have problems with diabetes and so on. Only one. Only you. So you're and then unfortunately for you, I don't have such a problem, so I can go. I can go on till 3 o'clock or 3:30. Recently, one group of lawyers called me to Indore National Group, and they asked me to speak the whole day on the Constitution, and I spent 7 hours with them, just breaking for a short lunch, going through the Constitution, which I enjoyed. I don't know about them, but I enjoyed it. I'm sure they did.
You kind of.
No, no, no. So let's hope that, I'm sure I will enjoy this, but
That is more important.
whether you will enjoy or not, we will see. We will see. That's yet to be seen. I hope at least some of you will find something useful. I just want to focus on two questions today. You know, how do we understand our constitution? So that's the main part. So maybe most of my time I'll focus on that because that is the, as Professor Joseph said, it is hugely misunderstood and distorted, and nobody knows what a constitution is. And I'm not here to tell you the biblical explanation of what is constitution. I'm simply here to show to you that nobody knows, and there are different ways of thinking about the constitution, and to invite you to think about the constitution in your own way, to tell you that there is no fixed way, which means that the responsibility comes to us. And so if at the end of the day we go away from this table with this, just the simple thought that I need to figure out for myself what is this constitution, because nobody knows, then I would be successful. So that's the main first point. The second point is to ask the question, is the constitution subject to economic policy, or is economic policy subject to the constitution? So to achieve economic goals, is the constitution a constraint or a limit, places a non-negotiable limit to economic policy choices or economic choices at the micro level? Or is it simply something, is just a legal document that can be interpreted or amended in such a way, and should be interpreted and amended in such a way as to facilitate economic policy? So I'll give two very brief examples to think about it. One is, why is there no market in contract killing? We know there is contract killing all over the world, not just in India. Even as we speak, roughly about 100 people are murdered every day on average. So today we have got up in the morning. By evening, around 100 people. Murder means someone killing someone else deliberately, planned with the intent to kill, not just accidental death. So by 12 midnight to 12 o'clock in the morning to 12 midnight, roughly 100 people would have been deliberately murdered. And now some of them, not every day, but we don't know, because no economist will be able to measure this. There's no data. But we know that some part of that is contract killing. Somebody's paid somebody, go and kill this person. But why is it we don't have a market in that? Is it not very inefficient to have a black market in contract killing? Would the price of contract killing go down if you had an open legal market rather than a black market? Would the efficiency improve? People will be killed more efficiently. But why is it not legal? See, so what I'm saying is, if money is being made by contract killing, why can't the constitution be amended to say, okay, if it's contract killing, it's okay. Emotional killing is not okay. But if there is a money to be made, because GDP will go up. When contract killing, one contract murder happens, the GDP goes up. Some service has been, growth will go up. So if you say, and then you can bring bargaining in, the man who's going to be killed can be informed you're going to be killed. How much will you pay us not to kill you? So you can have a bidding of somebody's going to kill me and I'm going to pay you not to kill me, and so all kinds of interesting possibilities, right? But no country in the world has pure microeconomics been applied to say, let's have a market in contract killing. And so that's one example of how legal norms are a constraint to economic policy. Because law, at the end of the day, the difference between constitution and other laws is that the constitution is fundamentally normative. It sets out norms on what is right and what is wrong. And these norms come from actually axiologies of society. Every family, every group, every individual is ultimately constituted by some sense of right or wrong. And criminologists will tell you that even the worst criminals will have some explanation, justification for brutal murder they commit. They should not have behaved like this. They should have done like this. My father should not have tortured me. And my, blah blah. They'll have some justification, and it comes from the word justification comes from the word jus, use. Use means the right norm. Use. That's why we say just one glass of water will do for me, right? Because I'm using the word just. I can also say the Supreme Court's judgment in this case was just, but I want just one glass of water. I'm using the same word because what is that word has this word jus. Jus means the norm, the standard. So the standard, this is not standard of right conduct. Standard of what I need is half a glass. So I don't want a full glass. Can you give me half a glass? Or I want a full glass, not a half a glass. So that's a norm, the standard, right? When it comes to a court decision, it's a standard of human conduct. When we say the decision is just, or the word justice, I have theorized the word justice in my own work as a standard of human conduct, of right human conduct. So when we say we must secure justice in the Constitution, it means we must secure a society where human conduct conforms to the standard of right human conduct set out in this Constitution. So point number one is that everyone has a sense of, every human being, it's inherent in our human nature that we have to have some sense of right or wrong. So conscience, that's why the Constitution talks of freedom of conscience. Conscience is the faculty, the capacity, the capability to distinguish between right and wrong based on our own use, our own norms of what is right and wrong. And so so we all have a sense of what is right and what is wrong. And it varies from individual to individual. It varies inside individuals. There's a big battle going on in our conscience about, is this right or wrong? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Right? There's always, and there are two types. One is from a pragmatic point of view, is it right or wrong? Should I eat more sugar or less sugar from a pragmatic point of view? Or it could be from a point of view of how I should treat other human beings. And the law is concerned only with one question, like medicine is concerned only with one question: is a human being or an animal or a being, sentient being, healthy or not? The law is concerned with only one question: is human conduct right or wrong? There's no other question. That's why I can only go to court against alleging a wrong conduct by a human being. Right. So law is the mechanism through which we set out the norms that the collective will enforce to secure right human conduct. So the only concern of law is human conduct right or wrong in accordance with a standard. Now that standard varies from individual to individual, family to family, group to group, country to natural, because a country is consisting of individuals and groups, right? So they vary, and there's huge conflict with each other over norms about what should be the norm, not only how it should be expressed, but how it should be interpreted, how it should be applied, how it should be enforced. So we say, okay, I don't have a son, I have only 2 daughters, so I can use this example. But if my son did something terribly wrong, I might say, okay, he's my son, he's a good boy, I know him well, give him another chance, right? But if it is somebody else's son, I may say, no, 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 let's make an example of him, if we must punish him, right? So, so how to enforce, how to apply this huge disagreement on all this. But behind all this is what is called, some of you are familiar with it in social sciences, what we call axiology. Axiology is the studies of axios. Axios is the process by which we create value in our own, in groups, individuals and groups attach value to something. So in some countries, for example, you cannot say that, in England, in the famous sort of in London, they gather every Sunday and make speeches and all that. They stand on a box because they say, because you cannot stand on the ground and criticize the monarch. So they put a box and stand on it, and then they attack the monarch. So it's wrong to hear whether you stand on 2 boxes or 3 boxes. You'll be taken away immediately if you do that. But there, at least 1 box will protect you. But so there are. We attach value to not attacking the monarch while you are standing on the ground, but you may attack with a soapbox. So these are fine distinctions we make on what is right and what is wrong and how to enforce them and what we attach value to. From this multiple axiologies, depending on the power of groups, some axios from this axiology gets codified as law and enforced as law. But that does not mean there are no other axiologies actually prevailing in society. The law or the constitution is not the only axiology. There are multiple axiologies in society. But which of these get privileged and made into a law or constitution, it really is a function of political power, ultimately political power. Because once it comes into the law, then it gets enforced. It's a group sanction behind it, right? And so we understand, so with this kind of background, we understand that the constitution is basically the Grundnorm. That's why commonly in political science, the constitution sets out the Grundnorm, the basic norms, which have been codified, not because they are right or not because they represent the will of the people, but because some powerful people got to put their norms in us and make it the Grundnorm, right? So the Grundnorm can be played with, can be tackled, because all it does is it gives the power of the state behind the enforcement of the Grundnorm. So there's hardly any country in the world that today does not have a constitution. You can take any scrap of paper and call it the constitution. If the state calls it the constitution, it becomes a constitution. So in terms of intellectual discipline, I don't think you can come up with any definition of what is a constitution. A constitution is what a state declares to be its constitution. But it does not require a particular minimum content or any. So you find extreme varieties in terms of what goes into a constitution, because it's simply the act of declaration by the claim of the states that this is the Grundnorm that we are declaring. So it reflects the state and the powers that control the state and their ideas of norms. But if the Grundnorm does not have the support of large sections of people, then that constitution will get overthrown. Or there will be huge violence over it, and can only be kept alive by violence, by police violence and military violence, and it will not stand on its own. So I've been part of a group that meets occasionally, a constitution building group from different countries. And so some of them ask me, wow, how is it that the Indian constitution has lasted 75 years, right? But many other constitutions have collapsed. So that is because the Indian constitution has a unique framework. So first point I'm making is that constitutions. First point I'm making is that there is a constant process in society of of identifying values, developing values. That's what we call, and study of that is called axiology, by which human beings attach value on what is right and what is wrong human conduct. Basically morality, on morality. Morality comes from the mores that are practiced by humans on how we treat each other. And those norms of morality are constantly clashing with each other. It's a churning thing. And from that, some of those get, depending on who's powerful, get put in as a constitution, and they entrench it. And when they entrench it, if it doesn't reflect the interests of the others, then there's attacks on it, because those other axiologies are not going to die and go away. They're there. People will assert it. People will defend it. They will die for it. And so that's why constitutions don't last. When you take one set of narrow set of norms of a certain elite, and they declare this is the constitution, the other axiologies will rise and revolt against that, and say, no, what we consider wrong should be also wrong, and what you consider right is what we consider wrong. We have to change that. That's why the revolutions take place over that. So so when these revolutions take place, which are normative in nature, what is the role of public finance and economics? So the second example I wanted to give you, one was this contract killing. The second example is, if you had to write a budget for Abraham Lincoln going into the Civil War, what would that budget be? In 1861, Abraham Lincoln said, "This nation cannot exist half slave and half free." The number of slaves at that point were less than the number of scheduled castes in India. But he said, no, I will not allow these people to be slaves. And I won't allow this nation to have slaves. And when that he could not persuade people, he said, we're going to go to war. The economy was doing well, cotton exports, using slavery, and all this was going on. But he said, no, simply on a normative point, this is, human beings cannot treat each other like this. We cannot enslave people. It came partly from his own religious faith and belief as a Christian, that this is not the way to treat human beings, and you cannot enslave people. But he took that decision. And suppose the Gulati Institute, he turned to the Gulati Institute and said, okay, I'm going to go to war when the cotton exports are going to go down. 2% of the people were wounded or killed. Much of the infrastructure was destroyed. There was no certainty about what return will come from this. GDP went down, and war is also a type of contract killing, but it's a legitimate contract killing, right? So, so what would economic policy tell him? Look, my God, you're not going. This is not sustainable, right? I'm investing. You should invest this in productive resources, which is what we used to always say. The World Bank can only provide resources for productive purposes, right? So sorry, we can't fund it. There's no fund. You won't get any budget for the Civil War. It lasted 4 years, 1861 to 1865, at the end of which he was murdered himself. Right. So at that time, what kind of economic policy can you construct? Here, I don't know the answer, but what kind of economic policy can you construct to support a civil war? The reason I'm asking that is not academic. I believe we are in the middle of a civil war in this country. The Civil War in the United States took place in the 8th decade of its constitution, depending on how you count it. And depending on how you count it, India is in the 8th decade of India's constitution. But civil wars and war, as we are seeing in the Middle East and so on, takes new shapes today. It's not like the old 1861-65 Civil War, armies forming and attacking each other on a hill and dying, and all. That's not how it happens. But we are in the middle of a civil war. If we are in the middle of a civil war, and we'll come to that, then what kind of economic policy would make sense? What are the economic parameters that we should be looking for? Right. the economic policy that emerged during Reconstruction in the United States, Jim Crow, where there was massive discrimination, that called for a different kind of economic approach. Economic policy, when they had a period of great growth, was a different kind of economic policies. So should not economic policy making be sensitive to the normative and political struggles that are going on in society? If not, are you not taking sides? Whether we consciously or not, are you not taking sides? How do you do that? This is now the field of economics. I was empathizing with the law faculty here because I have been a lawyer in the World Bank legal department for many years, working with a whole bunch of economists and struggling to make presentations like this on law, because economists are very naturally concerned with increasing production and efficiency and so on, productivity, efficiency, economic well-being, which is very good, very necessary. We are concerned about, the lawyers are concerned about the normative battles. And how do we find a common ground between these two, that economic policy can help normative battles and normative policies, and vice versa? That's really the issue to think about. Now, this is the introductory part, which has already taken me to 12:10. But I want to now, the second part, explain why I'm saying we are in the civil war and what the Constitution has to do with it. And here, I'm just thinking of, it's more efficient to just talk about it. Maybe more efficient to talk about it than put a slide. Some slide I may put, but yeah. So now the question is, how do we understand the Constitution in the context of, in a different way? So normally the Constitution is understood as a document which has 26 parts, although the part 22 is the last one, but some are A, B, C and all that. It has 26 parts and chapters within the parts divided into different topics and subsections. And much of it is, and it is treated almost like an administrative document, except that amendment requires 2/3 majority, and some cases and also sometimes approval of the state legislatures. But otherwise, it's basically a document that sets out a set of basic rules which have to be obeyed, which cannot be overridden by ordinary legislation. And is also binding for the courts of the country. They can interpret it, they can give meaning to it, but it's binding to them. This is the normal definition. But is there another way to understand the Constitution? And at least I'd like to put before you one other way. And that emerges from the history of the Constitution. So when we look at the history of the Constitution, we see that the Constituent Assembly was formed. And after the Constituent Assembly was formed, the drafting committee was created only on 29th August 1947, and before the drafting committee was formed, a number of advisory committees were formed, and these advisory committees were meeting and discussing various aspects. I'm not getting into the details, and those proceedings were taking place. And so when the drafting committee was formed, the mandate given to the drafting committee was the following of the Constitution: scrutinize the draft of the Constitution prepared by the constitutional advisor. The constitutional advisor was a ICS officer called Benegal Narasimha Rao, very distinguished person, many years of experience. 32 years he served in the ICS. While the country was fighting for its freedom, he was working within the British colonial structure. So his experience of colonialism was very different than those who were fighting for freedom. But he had a lot of experience. He was a very competent man. So the he was already an advisor to the Viceroy and so on. So they appointed him the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly. So he was asked to prepare a draft. Okay? which based upon the proceedings of the committees and looking at examples of other countries, reflecting all the ideas and suggestions that were before the Constituent Assembly. So he was to prepare a draft. The drafting committee was to look at this draft, give into effect the decisions taken in the Assembly, and include all matters ancillary thereto which have to be provided in the Constitution, submit to the Assembly for consideration the text of the draft Constitution as revised by the committee. So they would get a draft from the Constitution advisor. They would put all whatever they thought was arising from the Constituent Assembly into it, revise and give it back to the Constituent Assembly. The draft prepared by B.N. Rao was submitted in October 1947. Okay, and this was it was prepared in October 1947 and handed over to the drafting committee, which was established at the end of August, a couple of months before that. Along with the draft, various proposals were made by the advisory and other committees was given to the drafting committee. In this first draft that was given by Benegal Narasimha Rao, this is a slide which I'll probably share. It's a short slide. I will just. I can share it here. Idan. Yeah. No. Okay. Either why can okunundo? Or I can enlarge it a little bit. We can. It's clear now. It's clear now. So this is the draft that B.N. Rao draft preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of India, seeking to promote the common good, do hereby, through our chosen representatives, enact, adopt, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Okay. Now, this is comparable to the 1787 US Constitution, which says we, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution. 1901 Australian Constitution, which says people have agreed to unite. So it's all saying we have established, we have agreed, we have enacted we have created a country. South African Constitution, we the people of India, South Africa, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic. That is 1990, South African Constitution, South African Constitution, 1901. So this is a general model that he had followed. Now, what I want to come to, one second, is Ambedkar rejected this draft of the preamble. And there's a lot of history there, records to show that Dr. Ambedkar prepared his own draft. And this is that draft, based, of course, on suggestions and ideas in the Constituent Assembly, what is prevailing all over the world. Because Dr. Ambedkar was an incredible scholar. People don't realize that he went to Columbia University when he was like 22 years old. And he studied there from if I remember, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17. No, I think 15, 16, 16, 17, 15 to 18 or so, if I remember correctly. All I remember is he studied there for, the important thing is he studied there for 3 academic years. Now, I've studied and taught in US universities, and normally we take 3 to 4 4-credit courses, full courses in one semester. So you have 2 semesters. So you do 8 credits in a year, roughly, big courses. And 8 into 3 would be 24. Dr. Ambedkar took 71 courses in 3 years. 71 courses, including 27 courses in economics, anthropology, sociology, political science, German and French, and so on. It was phenomenal. And he also took these courses with John Dewey, Seligman, the greatest experts in their field in economics and social sciences and all that in their time. And he was such a good student that the other students would go to him to understand the lectures after the lecture was over. And they would say, there was an interview with one of the students saying when he spoke, it was like Dewey speaking, except we could understand him. And so I once went to a law university recently where the students were, I was to talk to them. Before that, they were preparing for exams. So I walked around and asked them, how are you doing it? They said, we are using ChatGPT. So they want to know what is Article 23 of the Constitution. They'll ask ChatGPT, what is Article 23? ChatGPT will explain better than the teacher, what it is. And they will just learn that. This is what they were doing. So when I spoke to them, I said, Ambedkar took 71 courses, right? Which is like 3 or nearly 4 times. Even 3 or 4 full courses is a heavy load. Right? I've done it myself. To teach one of these courses is very tough. Right? So he did phenomenal amount of work. So how do you think he managed without ChatGPT? Because he, so it was not there, right? So I said, you know what? Ambedkar did not use ChatGPT. He was ChatGPT for the other students. Like you are now going and asking ChatGPT, what did this mean? They were going to him and saying, tell us what this means. So Ambedkar was ChatGPT, not using ChatGPT. I told them you should try to be ChatGPT, not use ChatGPT like Ambedkar. So he was a phenomenal intellect. And even towards the end, one of the staff who worked with him used to say, morning I opened the door and Ambedkar is lying on his bed, 3 books on his chest, 3, 4 books on his bed, 5, 6 books on the floor. He was so hungry to read, to learn, to understand. And nothing that entered his head would ever disappear. So I've also read the story of his calling his valet, the same valet, and saying, I've written a short note about this man called C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. With no disrespect, I'm just quoting him. He said, I don't want to use the word he used. He said, this guy's not such a nice guy. I don't want to use the word that Ambedkar used. But he said, I've written something for a note to myself about him. Please get it for me. So this valet came back and said, sir, I looked in all your papers, can't find. He said, no, go to this book in this shelf, in that corner, and inside that you will find that note. And it was exactly there. Right? So he had tremendous retention, tremendous, phenomenal man. So he looked at this anodyne, boring draft prepared like this in 35 words. He said, this cannot be the vision of India. This cannot be the vision of India. So what did he do? He drafted something absolutely unprecedented, absolutely remarkable, which gives the entire character of the Constitution to us. Let's read it. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India, as we said, into a sovereign democratic, this is original socialist, was not there yet, 1976, sovereign democratic republic, and to secure to or promote among all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action, fraternity, assuring the dignity of every individual. Yes, equality of status of an opportunity, that's there as we have now, but fraternity has been a little bit altered. Fraternity assuring, what he wanted was fraternity assuring the dignity of every individual without distinction of caste or creed. Without distinction of caste or creed. He foresaw what was coming. He foresaw what was coming. Do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. For those who are interested, there is a book by a person called Akash Singh Rathore called Ambedkar's Preamble, A Secret History of the Constitution of India. Vintage books. If you're interested, you can read that. The draft preamble was further discussed and edited by the committee on 9th, 11th, 13th, 21st February and finalized as follows, which is what we now have before the 76th Amendment. Now, I want to come back to the Ambedkar draft. What is absolutely remarkable about this is the first sentence. We, the people of India, see, we've seen here that in America and all, we ordain and establish this constitution, right? We have agreed to unite. We have adopted this constitution. But he says something else here. He says, we, the people, have resolved to do something. We have resolved to do something. Not just we have adopted, approved. We have resolved to do something in future. What is it that the people have resolved? To constitute a new India. See, constitute means create. Constitute a committee means establish, create a committee. Constitute means create. So he made the constitution a document which provides, which is a framework for the people of this country to establish an India, sovereign democratic republic, which secures to its citizens justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. What does this mean? It means such an India does not exist. Because you cannot create what exists. So that language we have solemnly resolved to create India doesn't exist. To create India. We, the people of India, refers to the international law entity that has come into existence on 15th August. Right? As a nation, as a country recognized by other countries. That's a legal reference. But then he says, we have resolved to constitute India. We have resolved. So it's a declaration and of a revolution to create a democratic India, which has never existed on the subcontinent. Where to secure to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Such a India has never existed in this country. So from this we can say that Dr. Ambedkar saw the Constitution as a declaration by the people of an intent to a revolutionary intent to create an absolutely new polity that just did not exist anywhere in this subcontinent until then. Now, once we accept that, we realize that what he's positing here has three underlying principles, which inform the struggle of Dr. Ambedkar and all the struggles, people's struggles, the anti-caste struggle that took place in the 19th century, and the struggle that's going on worldwide. It's a struggle to establish a polity with equal humanity, based on equal humanity, equal citizenship, and equal representation or equal share of power for everyone. Now, opposing this is the history of the subcontinent of various types of monarchies and various types of social orders and systems, which are based, particularly, let's say, the Varna system, which is based on unequal humanity, belief in unequal humanity, unequal citizenship, and unequal representation in power. So this is the Civil War, right? The masses that are resolved, it should be D, resolved, to create a new India based on equal humanity, equal citizenship, and equal representation, and an oligarchy that is resolved to revert to an ancient Bharat based on unequal humanity. I'm not criticizing it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's what they believe. Because Chaturvarnya Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, right? We are divided according to our different gunas and karmas. Everybody doesn't have the same guna and karma. But that's a view. That's one view. And therefore, unequal humanity, unequal citizenship, and unequal representation. And there are other views also like that. The two cannot coexist. Now, Ambedkar had a chance of simply putting in the Constitution equal humanity, equal citizenship, and equal representation as the only view within the Constitution, and leaving out space for the other view, challenging that. But he did not do that. He recognized that it would require a long struggle to realize this republic. That's why he did not say, we the people of India hereby constitute India as a sovereign democratic republic to secure to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. He said, we, the people of India, have resolved to constitute, rather than we, the people of India, constitute. Therefore, my theorization of the Indian Constitution, my understanding of the Indian Constitution is, it is a site of struggle. Indian Constitution is a site of struggle between these two forces. And it's still going on. That's the war that's still going on, where gender is part of that, caste is part of that, region and culture is part of that. You know, they who say, no, gender is also a fight for equal humanity and equal citizenship and equal representation. Right? Class is a struggle for equal humanity, equal citizenship, and equal representation. So, Dr. Ambedkar said in his last speech in the Constituent Assembly, here is the Constitution, now fight inside the Constitution, not on the streets. Because why? Because he had made the Constitution a site of struggle, a revolutionary struggle. You can fight inside the Constitution. Now, how did he do that? And that's the last part on the Constitution that I want to talk about. And then I think we can have some interaction on this before we come to the economic policy. See, you can, this is a complicated slide, but basically what I'm trying to say is I've not taken the parts in the order in which they're in the Constitution, but it is a site of struggle because on one hand, he has created 7 categories of state entities. Not he, the Constituent Assembly has created seven categories of state entities, right? The union, number 1. The states, number 2. Union territories, number 3. Scheduled and tribal areas. These are entities which have power, which have power to govern, administer, and create policies. And then panchayats, municipalities, and cooperative societies. These are 7 types of entities that have been created by the Constitution. So he is now eliminating all these feudal and other entities and is creating this structure. Not he, but the Constituent Assembly is creating this structure. Some of it was already in the Government of India Act, some of which is new, like cooperative societies and others. And their character is not colonial, they're not monarchic, they're democratic. Then he puts in he puts in 9 safeguards, political and social safeguards, to ensure that these institutions will work in a democratic manner. So who can be a citizen? Equal on a basis of equality. Very controversial now. I think our constitutional fundamental ideas are not being followed right now. Fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy. These are all constraints on power of these institutions, fundamental duties, special provisions relating to certain classes, how you make a big battle over language. So what is the methodology to decide on language, elections, emergency provisions, amendments. These are safeguards that will constrain power in some way or the other. Then there are 2 sets of economic safeguards: finance, property, contracts, and suits, part 12, and part 13, trade, commerce, and intercourse within the territory of India. There is also a set of safeguards to protect the civil servants and independence of the civil service. And there are some other miscellaneous and other provisions which you can ignore. So here he set up these tools, these areas where a framework of institutions, a framework of safeguards within which these battles with different axiologies can fight each other and shape the new India that will emerge. And And that struggle is what we are now witnessing, actually. Now, the challenge for us, whether this fight is getting outside the constitution through lynching and through mob attacks and disregarding the rule of law and so on. We can have this fight inside the constitution. We can debate these ideas. We can have recent debate and develop the new India, through this democratic constitutional discourse. But the concern is that these institutions themselves are sort of getting out of that framework. So let me stop here and then have a discussion. What I've said so far is we need to understand the constitution in multiple ways. It is whatever any country declares as the constitution is the constitution. So we have to understand it in terms of the content of each country. The history, I'm not going to the long history of the constitution, but clearly what Ambedkar did through the preamble was to recognize that this country is not at a stage where we can just proclaim on paper that we are a democracy. We can only resolve to create a democracy. And he's given us fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy. And on the economic side, I'll talk about that a little more. He has given us various instruments through which we can take this fight forward. But our challenge is to keep this fight within the constitutional framework, not on the streets. He foresaw all this. And then through democratic discourse, develop, and he warned, he said, this may not happen. Few months before he passed away, you may have seen it in the internet, he had an interview with the BBC where he said, democracy will not work in India because there is a caste system, therefore it will not work. And then he added, communism may be better. And that was his, he did not have much hope. But still, he has given us the site of struggle. He's given us rights, which are instruments that we can use to fight the struggle. And it's up to us now to ensure that this fight is kept within the Constitution, and to whatever we believe in, unequal humanity or equal humanity, we take that agenda forward and convince people. And ultimately, the non-negotiable bottom line is that we cannot be an oligarchy, we have to be a democracy. That democracy comes from two words, demos and kratos. Kratos means power, demos means common people. So democracy means power must be in the hands of common people. Otherwise, it's not a democracy. Just voting is not a democracy. So that's the given that consensus is that we must be a democracy, but we have different axiologies, different views. Let us debate all this together and create a new India, where we can all live together in peace. This is the reason I tell others that our constitution has lasted, because Dr. Ambedkar, the only person in the world who conceived of a constitution as a site of struggle and created an architecture that provides the struggle, and therefore it has been durable. Whereas if he had simply had a winner-take-all approach, the constitution, like other constitutions, would have collapsed. The US Constitution has lasted 250 years also because it is also a framework for struggle. Rather than a ruling out one group and a winner-take-all approach. So let me stop here and see if we can have any discussion on what I've said about how we understand our constitution. Any comments are welcome. Any questions, agreements, disagreements?
I think, sir, I think you wanted us to go home by saying that we need to figure out.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's precisely what, for me here,
Yes.
my heroine
Yes.
is the person who says that, sir, I don't know.
Yes, exactly. I need to figure
Everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere, such people are thrown out of the campus.
Yeah, exactly.
We say that if somebody says that I know,
Yes.
they say we have to second gate is for that.
Yeah, yeah.
We want to the people who don't know.
Yeah.
So you put the thing in the whole right spirit. I was actually thinking that, why we remain together, India remain together. It's something which we also talk about. In fact, we say that Finance Commission played an important role in holding states together. So
Yes,
despite all the-
iron frame and all.
Yes.
I think I was wondering, I mean, please, I don't know anything. That's why
No, no,
ignorance is exposed.
Not
So,
to
so any blunder can be asked, no problem. So I think the whole provision of legislative assembly of the people who are selected by the people, quite many of them are illiterate.
Yes.
Quite many of them are corrupt in our country.
Yes.
People can, our representative will go there.
I think they're having that problem, the US also now.
So, actually, you are right, we are, the constitution, the whole thing is legislations are made by them. The legislative assembly, they are not doing, like people are not there. So, is it that enabled us to continue? That freedom, in that sense, given today, in our, if you go to Nima Sabha TV, wonderful deliberations are going. Wonderful, excellent. Whether you like it or not, it's a different issue altogether. That opportunity for people to reflect upon what you see around and raise it over there, convert that into something which, okay, today we agreed that a Kerala, left and right together agree, Kerala, not Kerala, no more. So, is it that, I don't know, I'm a bit confused. I don't know whether I raised any question at all.
No, you have.
I don't know.
Very
So,
important.
so I think that provision, that particular three compartments working, legislative assembly, executive, and the judiciary, that fits. Is it being very useful in whole? Second thing is, you have not talked anything about what we were worried about. We would like to hear more about what is called the fiscal federal architecture.
Yes, yes.
That's what we are, I think, hearing from the horse's mouth. That's it.
Yes.
We would love to hear about that.
Yes.
And to what extent that has been effective in holding us together.
Yes.
After all, money matters. Without money, kya hai? So, by selling,
Yes.
I don't know whether we can start with that and any other, I think, please, I think questions from the students will be most welcome. Ritik? Yeah.
Hi.
Yes.
Like you said about constitution is itself a site of struggle, and it has to be inside the constitution. And while we don't have institutions to have a fight, then we have to move our fight into streets, right? So that is my question, because the institutions are more or less like owned by some sort of class. So the constitution actually serves some classes than the like the unprivileged people.
Pranam Bharathan will be in his group. No doubt. He is in the Pranam Bharathan, the dominant classes articulation.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
I have a question on the collapse of constitution. You have mentioned constitutions has been collapsed in many countries.
Yes.
Is it due to the concentration of power in some pillars? If executive become too powerful, we had emergency situation in India. It was executive have exceeding its power. So that type of situation leads to the collapse of constitution or something.
Yes, very. Yes.
So, sir,
Yes, ma'am.
I think it is an intelligent way of looking at the constitution. I don't know, the first experience we got it from you. My question is, you already mentioned about the civil war and, in that time, which way, the constitution will react or be. But if you consider it is an unforeseen situation like this COVID, that time, see the economic policies and the constitution that go hand in hand. I think most of the countries it happens. So there are situations like that also.
Yes. Yes.
One another point I like to add is that, see, there are everything, justice, equality, fraternity, everything available in our constitution. But now the citizenship itself is a question. And many people are struggling for that, for voters list, or the case of Manipur. So many issues are there, even though we have got a strong constitution.
Yes. Yeah. Yes,
I think we are in the midst of civil war.
yes, that's right, yes. Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. I would like to state that we enjoyed as much as you enjoyed the session.
Thank you.
And also,
Very kind of,
and also like feeling constitution as a philosophical document also, apart from the legal
Yes, yes.
document that we always feel so. So you have mentioned that axiology is being codified into law, and what is the like what are the institutions which basically influence that process? So is it anything to deal with the collapse of the constitution, as Shahid mentioned, that religious ideologies when feed into these kinds of axiologies codified into law? So is it the possibility of collapsing the constitution is more?
because of religious,
Yeah,
religious axiologies.
Working towards.
working towards turning it into law. Second thing is about like you mentioned that Ambedkar's preamble as a resolve, like we have a resolve, to convert India into a new India. But how much have been we constrained that something was a resolve to move from good to best, but then in the real practical situation, we feel that we moved from good to worse or worst. So
Yes.
how that is,
What is the state of that, enterprise?
yeah.
Of that project?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So it's another version of Ashwati's question. What will be the future of our constitution in your opinion? That we are facing the struggles in the citizenship area, and the fiscal federalism area, religious area, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Whenever a person is raising anything, the next day the ED is in their house.
Yes.
So the freedom of speech, that every area is in struggle. So what is, in your opinion, what will be the future of our constitution?
Very good question. Anyone else wishes? to
Sir,
add?
it was a very good introduction, especially you connected it with the principles of constitutionalism. And I have heard a lot of constitutional lectures, and this is the first time I'm hearing something. The constitution is divided something like the categories of state entities, the political, social safeguards, and all. So that was a very wonderful experience. And my concern is. As you said, this is a constitution as a site of struggle. Whether, yes, of course, we have the provisions of amendment and all, but is it really capable for addressing all kind of future challenges and changes?
Is it capable of?
Yes, any type of future challenges or changes may be
Can
happen.
it,
So
is it robust enough to
Yes.
take on the challenges? Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very important question. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone sitting in the? I always like to sit in the back,
Yes,
in the back row, so I'm very empathetic to those who are in the back.
Since
you
you
belong
belong
to
to that tribe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Anyone wants to say anything? So I'll try and respond to these quickly. I think the first question sir had raised about what has held India together as $1 million question. Everyone claims, everyone claims, every institution, not everyone, claims credit. That is the administrative framework, the iron frame of the administration, so on and so forth. But my own feeling is that, see, those of us who are from Travancore, we've not been, we've been effectively ruled by the British in the, since the resident was appointed here. Maharaja cannot even travel to Chennai without getting approval from the young British resident who will say who should go, who should not go. But technically, we were not ruled directly by the colonial people. So the day, August 15th is the day when, for the first time in a formal way, we were ruled by people from outside Kerala. So it's not our Independence Day, it's the day we lost our independence. For the first time in recorded history. But I was born, it's 53, 6 years after that. The constitution was only 3 years old. The country was only 6 years old when I was born. But what I understand from the excitement that I saw even when I was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old was that people were joyful that we were part of this republic, that we were now ruled from Delhi, not from London. It was not simply a geographical change, but it's mainly because I think what we valued was that we were in a democracy. So the only non-negotiable thing is that this two things is that, first of all, Ambedkar recognizes, right, which very few others did, if anyone did. Ambedkar recognizes that there are struggles going on in this country, massive struggles. And the departure of the British is not going to end it. The only struggle was not the struggle against the British. So I have another chart I will share. See, there are, in my understanding, I say there are 4 forces that are fighting in this country. What I call the social left and the economic left, and social right and economic right. The economic left are those who believe that the fundamental, that what needs to be changed, the revolution should be in terms of the means of production and production relationships. The social left, and that is the base, the rest is superstructure. Social left are those who believe that social relationships are at the base, the economic structure. That's why, for example, contract killing is not, you cannot have a market, because ultimately what brings people together is a set of norms. Social comes from the word socius. Socius means friend. So social is that which is friendly. That is why we say, sir is very social, means he's friendly. I'm antisocial, means I'm not friendly. So we believe that constructing friendly relationships between people, the framework for ensuring that relationship between human beings are friendly and not antisocial, is at the base of society, is at the base. And from there you construct, within that framework, no contract killing and so on and so forth. That's why contract killing, there's no economic market, because it's antisocial, right? You make production choices depending on available technology, weather, all these things. You start to meet the needs of people within that framework. So we believe that unless you democratize society, we cannot, through economic production relationships cannot be democratized. You must democratize economic production relationships, and there's no question about that. But we have to start at the democratization of the social order, which is where we say that we want equal humanity, equal citizenship, equal representation, and Ambedkar's equality, liberty, fraternity, which are not invented by him, but he has said this is what we are struggling for as a basic. So we have the social left, which is on behalf of people but wants society to be democratized. Economic left that wants, they have nothing against society being democratized, but they want to give primacy to production relationships. On the right, we have the social right that believes that India must be restored to the Varnashrama Dharma. There's a whole discussion on Varna, caste, jati, which is a separate long discussion. I won't get into it. But we must be reorganized based on the Varna system, not the jati system, although that they are the same, and what they are is a separate issue. And we must be a Hindu Rashtra constructed on that. We must go back to the Vedic era. And there's the economic right, which means which wants us to be market economy integrated with the global economy, right? Now, social right, economic right are a lot of contradictions, more than between the economic left and social left. But they're working together now. But economic left and social left are not talking on talking terms. And therefore, today, economic left has become wiped out everywhere else in the except outside Kerala. There is no economic left anymore. The only fight against social right and economic right is from the social left. Nobody else at the national level. So at least now, I hope we will find a way for economic left and social left to at least try and understand each other and work together. Otherwise, the republic will be gone. So this is my own analysis, but I take the anti-caste movement of the 19th century as a very powerful movement of the social left, in which about 20-25 titans emerged throughout this country, and culminating in Dr. Ambedkar's call for the annihilation of caste in 1936. And that's why shortly before he passed away, he said, nothing can happen. Basically, he said, look, democracy can't work here because you have to get rid of the caste system. So unless we get rid of the caste system, get rid of patriarchy, these two things, I don't think we can move forward. We have to weaken them. We cannot move forward. Nothing will move forward. So, and this is not altered by the British being here or going away. In fact, the British presence for their own purposes, not out of any altruism, but out of selfish purposes, they help to push forward the agenda of breaking down the caste order and the patriarchy for their own purposes. And in fact, that's why, there was concern that they were leaving, and India, Dr. Ambedkar said India will be ruled by an oligarchy of 3 or 4 communities, which is what is now going on. So the first point I want to make is that the Constitution did not invent the struggle. There is a ground level reality of, this is a simplistic view of social left, social right, just to make us aware that there are many, many struggles going on in this country. Those struggles have been going on for centuries. They're going on now. And the challenge for Dr. Ambedkar was, how do we create a common framework within this institution, in this landscape, within the subcontinent, a set of institutions. So he created, cooperative came later, 6 sets of institutions, put certain safeguards over those institutions to limit them, limit their power, and constrain the elite and the oligarchy. And he saw representation, a representative democracy, as a key way of dismantling oligarchy. So he had a view. I want to bring India together. And the one thing that this very diverse constituent assembly did at that time could not question, no one questioned, was that the one fundamental they agreed was democracy. Democracy, not simply in terms of what is democracy, how deep democracy should be was another issue. But you had to have the fig leaf of democracy, whatever system you had. You cannot abandon. Even today, no one from the extreme left or extreme right is willing to say no democracy. They claim that what we are saying is real democracy, but they cannot say no democracy, right? So at least Dr. Ambedkar managed to establish that principle that it's non-negotiable, that we have these struggles going on, but let us fight it let the objective be to put power in the hands of people. Right. Let anyone come out and say, we do not want people to rule us because they're illiterate or uneducated and so on and so forth, right? Nobody will say that. They will say that indirectly, but the proposals to have only voting restricted to educated people and all that are completely rejected. It will never be accepted. So that's one thing, that the foundation is democracy. And within that, in a democratic way, can these struggles continue? For that, he's created these big institutions, a place where, as Sir correctly said, people can come together and make the only law that binds us will be made in a place where anyone can be a member anyone can compete, anyone can contest and come there, and they can represent whatever they want. They may be corrupt, may not be corrupt, but we won't let the best be the enemy of the good. Let it come, and let us make law only through there, right? And an executive which is subordinate to the legislature, although which it is, because the head of the executive is usually the prime minister or the chief minister, who are elected people, and a judiciary which is independent of all this. So he provided a very basic structure. Then he said there will be states. So the Article 1 is India, that is Bharat shall be a union of states. I always argue that India, having been defined as the India that does not yet exist, the yet to be born India, the reference to Bharat in Article 1 coming after this reference is also not to the old Bharat, but to a new Bharat that does not exist. We cannot have define India as not yet constituted, and then have in Article 1 a reference to a Bharat which is already existed in the past. So India, that is Bharat, is also the new India, the same democratic new India described as Bharat. And so he's provided the framework of who can be citizen, then union, states, and union territories. So the basic structure without which a state cannot function. Now, our responsibility, and I'll answer some of these questions through this, is that our responsibility is to make sure that these function in a democratic manner, which means that all of these institutions function. And economic policy, now I shift because of lack of time to economic policy, that economic policy also functions to advance the idea of democracy. That we do not want economic policies that will take power away from the hands of common people. Because then you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Let's say that will produce high growth. But if you've disempowered people, you've excluded people from decision making, then you've defeated the whole enterprise. And secondly, economic policies, we must insist, must come from these constitutional institutions. They cannot come from extra constitutional sources. The business, for example, has no business to drive economic policy. So we want to make sure that the institutions that create economic policies are robust. Then the state will be robust. The constitution will be robust. And they're accountable and they're transparent. And that particularly these two large social frameworks of caste and gender are weakened and dismantled. Sometimes I go to meetings, I make young people, and I talk to young people, stand up and take an oath, saying we will be the last generation to live under Varnashrama Dharma. We will be the last generation to live under patriarchy. In our generation, in our life, we will end it, because these things live only in our minds and in our hearts. Once we realize that they're a fraud, both Varnashrama and the patriarchy are basically a fraud on the people. Once we realize that, then they don't exist anymore. So if we can focus on these, make sure that people's voice is protected. So in one of our functions in the World Bank, and I personally had a big fight about this in the World Bank, was to ensure that economic policies emerge from democratic institutions, not a bunch of PhDs from Harvard like me coming and saying this is what should be economic policy for a country. No business. That is the old order. We want people, the unwashed, illiterate masses, because they have wisdom. They know what they need. Nobody has any right to assume that they are less or more intelligent than anyone else. Because we all, see, we had Robert McNamara was president of the World Bank, president of Ford Foundation. you know, architect of the Vietnam War and in the US. At the end of his life, he was supposed to be one of the most brilliant people in the world. At the end of life, he said, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. But millions of people paid a bitter price for that, for his brilliance and his technical sort of excellence. Right? So I think the Constitution gives us we have a framework that no other country has comparable to us. For example, China doesn't have, which says that simple things. Dr. Ambedkar gave a very simple framework. Right? It was his genius that crafted this idea that, look, our real challenge is not to suddenly proclaim a democracy, but to carry forward the existing struggles that are going on in the society, recognize them, give them a space, as you correctly said. They have been strangulated. The struggles have been strangulated in these spaces. We have no voice, which is why this is a remarkable space where I can talk like this. There are very few places that will have me talk like this, recognize that we need to have spaces where the concerns of common people will decide at the end of the day. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes was one of the most distinguished and respected judges of the US Supreme Court, early 20th century. He once said, if the people of the United States want to go to hell, my job as a judge is to help them to do it. Not to say, you stupid people, you don't know anything. You are going to go to hell. I will take you to heaven. There's no, my job in a democracy is, that's genuinely what the people want. We'll go to hell. Get on the bus. So I think that's the challenge. And there is and what I want to say towards the end, I think my laptop has connect, plug in. Sir, he'll come. I'll give it to him. So you asked what is holding India together? I think it's democracy. It is democracy. It is the idea that common people have the power and the authority, the idea, the aspiration, not the reality, that you have equal power to run this country regardless of your personal qualities, guna karma. It's a rejection of this idea of guna and karma. It says you may have no guna, no karma, but you have equal right to run this country. And that is what is keeping this idea. The moment we abandon that, I think we'll all go our separate ways. And that is being attacked. Let us have no doubts about it. That is being attacked. And again, we are going back to this oligarchy wanting to keep power for themselves and give no power to the others. So that is the institutions are captured. I've already said you're right, they're captured. But it is up to us to put pressure, regardless of which flag, which party. These are all not important. We are looking at fundamental tidal forces that are moving history forward. That all institutions, no one who takes power, regardless of his ideology, wants accountability or wants anyone else to share power. That is the nature of concentration of power. Someone else asked about power being concentrated, and I said, absolutely correct. We have to fight that. So we have to fight for decentralization, fragmentation of power, and concentration of power definitely is opposed to democracy. So if we keep in mind the guiding idea of power in the hands of the people, let us not through legal policy, judicial decisions, economic policy, strip people of their right to Swaraj, to rule themselves, which is at the foundation of this republic of ours. Yes, ma'am, I think it's a good example of COVID. Those are situations where, compelled by a life and death threat, we tried to go together. However, there was a lot of violation of democratic norms. A lot of poor people suffered, not in Kerala less, but in other parts of the country. And I think if we had approached it in a more democratic manner, especially outside Kerala, I think we would have had probably a better handling of the situation. There was a lot of very brutal, coercive behavior, unnecessary, excessive regulations and restrictions. And but yes, I think that was a challenge of how to manage consistent with constitutional norms and values. Yes, I agree that there is an attack on questioning equality, liberty. The very idea of citizenship is all being questioned because ultimately the oligarchy wants to keep power to itself. And so the oligarchy is being seriously attacked by this constitutional idea of democracy and the attack on these oligarchic ideas of patriarchy and Varna and so on. Then religious axiology is turning into law. I think that when you say I see ultimately it is very hard to religion is an organizational form of some kind of metaphysical approach. We struggle in the law with defining what is religion, and in fact in the US jurisprudence they don't define religion at all, because there's a clause in the US Constitution against the state establishing religion. So if you define it, you're establishing it. But we have defined it in a particular way. I'm not getting into that. But basically, religion is an institutional framework that deals with spirituality. Right? And I think axiological views and moral issues are very closely integrated with religion. So I think it's hard to say that, look, religion cannot come into axiology, because religions are very important repositories of ideas of axiology, and some are very negative, some are very positive. But so I argued in this 9-judge, I am appearing in the Supreme Court now from time to time pro bono on behalf of marginalized sections on constitutional law issues. So I recently argued before the 9-judge bench a few days ago. And what main point I argued was there are reform movements within religions. The anti-caste movement was a democratic movement, or the Bhakti movement was a democratic movement emerging from within religion. And I argued that the Supreme Court is actually stifling these reform movements. And I gave judgments to explain that. And I said, you should not do that. You shouldn't take the view that religion cannot be reformed. The state cannot touch religion. It may be through the state, it may be outside the state, but there are people who want religious belief and practice to be reformed. The belief, for example, that some people are born less because of what they did in their previous birth. We don't want such a belief to exist, to be protected. We want that belief to be completely wiped out in this country, right? So I said, look, we are gender-related beliefs, right? So sometimes there are religious beliefs that we have to question, we have to change. And these are reform movements, and you should allow reform movements equal legitimacy and space, and not simply take it as religion versus state. Ultimately, these are issues of people struggling for the common goals of equal humanity, equal citizenship, and equal representation. So I would say that we have to let these movements evolve within religions, and religions are dynamic. There are a lot of, and what we do when we attack religion is we actually help the conservative forces within religion, because then religions immediately sort of fall back. They close ranks and they strengthen. This was the main argument used by James Madison, for example, the Ambedkar of America, saying don't make Christianity a state religion in America. 250 years ago, there was no rival. Everyone was Christian. They could have made Christianity the state religion of America. He said that's the best way to destroy Christianity. I'm not quoting him, but he basically said, you make Christianity state religion, then it will be finished off, because everyone will come, they will use state power for this and state power for that, and the dynamism and flexibility of this of religion will die. So they've stopped Christianity from being a state religion. So what we want is to have democratic approaches to now some religions, take Islam, take Christianity, they already have integrated into their theology very democratic beliefs that all human beings are equal and are created by God in an equal way and so on. There's theology in it that supports democracy. Now it's up to them to decide, they should all recognize that India either stays as a democracy or is destroyed. There is no third option. And so all of us should try to move our religions and our academic work and all this in order to support the idea that Kratos' power is in the hands of demos. And for example, if you take Islam and the Protestant Christianity, most of these are run by democratic groups of devotees. In Islam, there's no clergy. The people in a mosque, they will democratically make decisions. That is the structure. Now, here we have other religions where the clergy is extremely powerful and disempowering people. So we must help democratic reforms within religion. I would not take an absolute view, because I think there are good axiological norms, democratic axiological norms that can emerge from religion. Religions can learn from each other. And here I go by what Narayana Guru said, actually. Narayana Guru said his life's message. He said, "Ende Upadesha Saram is this." He said, "Ellavarum, ella madangaleyum tyajya grahya vivechanathodu padhikanam." Follow cheyanamennalla, padhikanam. Ellavarum ella madangaleyum tyajya grahya vivechanathodu independently, critically study all madams. Adil കാണുന്ന നന്മ ഉൾക്കൊള്ളണം. ഡിസഗ്രിമെന്റ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അത് സമബുദ്ധിയും സമബോധത്തോടുകൂടി സെറ്റിൽ ചെയ്യണം. So look for good ideas on how human beings should treat each other, good norms, wherever they may be. They may be in religion, they may be outside religion. But find them, study them, understand them. And they've all evolved. No religion is static. They've always been evolving. They will continue to evolve. It comes from all of us. It's a very important question, but that's, I think it requires a nuanced answer. And I think to engage with religion rather than fight it on the basis of democracy is a good piece of advice from Narayana Guru, who said in 1925, Hindu noru madame illalo, for reasons that I'm not getting into. So he got deep into what is madam, what is jati, and so on and so forth. That's another topic. But I think we should try to engage with religion and use it where necessary to advance democratic norms. Why? Because without democracy, this country cannot survive. And we cannot live here in this country. So therefore, we must use all available axiologies to advance democracy. Then what is this? What is the state of that project? That project is very young. As I said, the state of this project in the United States in 1861, in the 8th decade of their independence, was civil war. So we are also at that stage, which means we have progressed towards a real robust engagement with these issues. But it's spilling out onto the streets and getting into violence. So that's why Ambedkar has said, okay, I'm giving you an arena, nice stadium in which you can fight. But if you want to go and fight in the mud outside, how can I stop you? But we must therefore try to ensure that that we are now at a critical stage, because it is succeeded, there is big backlash against it. If the constitution had failed, there would not be such a backlash against it, an attempt to overthrow it. It is because it is powerful, because it is successful, because all of these principles of socialism, secularism, democracy, and all this equality, liberty, fraternity, and so on, these are powerful ideas. So therefore, the oligarchy is attacking it and destroying it. So I think I'm encouraged that these ideas have taken root. People have started asserting that idea. There's a backlash against it, and we should not be deterred. We should fight for these ideals in an uncompromising way. That's how we engage with the Constitution. Now, if I can, yeah, I just take two very brief time to introduce. See, I have put together. This is not readable. Let me share it. But I put together. I'll just give you an example. I can share it later. Why am I out of this? I think I'm out.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. I'll just say I put the relevant issues relevant to economic policy into 3 or 4 broad heads of the. There's very extensive provisions in the Constitution to implement what I just said. For example, on the ideology of socialism, okay, you have Article 39B that says ownership and control of the material resources of the community are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. So there should not be concentration of wealth, right? Because 39C says that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. Now, I think these are directive principles of state policy, and we have to not only observe them in formulating economic policy, we must find economic policies that will advance them, because these are mandatory policies for the state. But we find that there is very little attention to these policies, right? 39B and 39C. Then Article 41, right to work. This is the economic part of it, which I was saying. Right to work, to education, and to public assistance in certain cases. The state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. So high priority given to this. Are we giving the priority that the Constitution has given to this? Duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. The state shall regard the raising of the level of nutrition and the standard of living of its people and the improvement of public health as among its primary duties. And in particular, the state shall endeavor to bring about prohibition of the consumption except for medical purposes of intoxicating drinks and drugs, which are injurious to health. Okay. Organization, then protection and improvement environment, and so on. Then I come to economic justice, right? We have Article 19, which gives 1C the fundamental right to form associations or unions. Now, economic policy should ensure that the fundamental right to form unions are mandatory. It's a fundamental right to form a union and to have, now we have seen the trade union movement dismantled. If Kerala's trade union movement is dismantled, tomorrow Kerala will be Bihar or Madhya Pradesh. Right. And this is a constitutional mandate. So how much are we integrating this into our economic policies? Then the right against exploitation, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. Now we have to expand the concept of forced labor, not narrow it to only indentured labor and so on. A lot of labor today is basically forced labor. You take Uber drivers driving 17 hours a day in Delhi and Bombay and all that, 18 hours a day, sleeping in their car, earning virtually nothing. If that's not forced labor, I don't know what it is, because they have no other way of surviving. So we have to see. We have to, internationally, they're working on modern slavery, right? Yes, yeah. So we have to understand slavery. Trafficking is slavery. Forced labor is slavery. So we have to understand today's context. It's like caste, right? I've been writing somewhere. Today we understand caste in terms of 5 or 6 characteristics that were defined by Hutton, Risley, Karl Marx, Max Weber, and so on and so forth. And endogamy, you cannot marry anyone else, work, vocation. And we look around and say, we don't find this in our society, so there's no more caste. But actually caste exists. It is just, we have not come up with a new definition. It has morphed into something completely different. Patriarchy has changed. Its old forms are not there. It has new forms. Right? So we have to, I'm trying to define caste in a way that we can see. To me, the proof of existence of caste is very simple. Caste is a system for monopolizing power by a few people, few communities. If power, so long as power is in the hands of a few communities and oligarchy, there is caste. That is caste. The method by which they do it, today they'll call it merit, yesterday they called it purity, ritual purity, today call it merit, whatever. But there is a concentration of power. That is caste. Similarly, we have to understand the essence of slavery, the essence of trafficking and forced labor, and ensure that the constitutional mandates that we have to prohibit all this is then we said citizens, men and women equally, have the right to an adequate means of livelihood. Now, have we adequately worked on this other than the 8 ILO standards and so on? Have we done our own independent work of what is an adequate means of livelihood? We have state shall make provision for securing just and humane conditions of work and for maternity relief. This is in the Constitution. I don't think any other constitution has such a set of labor rights, thanks to the left people, economic left people that were in the Constituent Assembly. and so we say, sorry, I'll just, then living wage for workers, right? State shall endeavor to secure by suitable legislation a living wage, which is the highest form of wage, not minimum wage or subsistence wage. Living wage is the providing for leisure, providing for self-development and recreation and all that. Then participation of workers in management of industries. Right? That is in the Constitution. The state shall take steps to secure the participation of workers in the management of undertakings. 39E, the health and strength of workers, men and women, and tender age of children are not abused, and citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter avocations unsuited to their age or strength. State shall, this is very, very important, 38.2, the state shall in particular strive to minimize inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities, and opportunities, not only amongst individuals, but also amongst groups of people residing in different areas or engaged in different vocations. What kind of economic policy will help us to achieve that? Achieve growth. We are not against growth, but consistent with this, that there is equal pay for equal work for men and women, right? 38.1 says, state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as it may a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all institutions of national life. So economic justice is a fundamental objective of this republic. So what is economic justice? How do we define it, right? And what is equality or economic equality? I once invited Montek Singh Ahluwalia to come and speak to our Supreme Court judges in a retreat that we had organized. And in front of them, I asked him, how do you, are you implementing the constitutional vision of equality? So he said, yes, equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcome. Now, he was a key policymaker at that time. What legal right does he have to sit in government and reject equality of outcome as a legitimate goal? He may disagree with it. He may think it's bad from economic policy point of view. But is he free to do that as a government official? To say that equality of outcome, no, that is not the issue. Equality of opportunity. But we have equality of outcome in terms of distribution of material resources so as to best serve the common good, no concentration of wealth, right? So I'm seeing evidence of these important constitutional, important constitutional mandates being completely ignored or bypassed. And so what can legal people working in economic research institutions do to bring these to the forefront and say that these are requirements, you cannot violate them. This is what our job used to be as lawyers in the World Bank, frankly. We tell the economists want to do A, B, C. We say, no, sorry, you can't do that because we have a charter, we have international law, and you cannot violate international law or the charter of the World Bank. So there used to be conflict, but ultimately our job was to ensure that the work of the institution was consistent with the law. So I would hope that with under your leadership, this institution can play a role in picking out these kind of economic policy mandates that emerge from the Constitution and work on those and say, how do we actually sensibly implement them? Given the realities of our country, given our need for economic growth, no one in the world rejects, like democracy, nobody rejects the need for economic growth. But how to do it, that's a complex problem. I was once had a chance to speak to some CEOs of Tata companies when about the Constitution and so on. So I told them, I said, why are you people being so lazy that you just go there and throw out the tribals and dig up the earth and get out minerals and sell them to make money? Can't you find a better way of making money? Be more imaginative than this way of taking the weakest, most powerless people in the country, wiping them out and digging into their sacred land and then making money from that. It's because they're powerless. If they were very powerful, rich people, if tomorrow I said there is gold under Rashtrapati Bhavan, will they demolish Rashtrapati Bhavan and dig it out and take gold? So you're exploiting the social and political powerlessness of people and finding the easiest, most lazy way to make money because the normative frameworks are not being asserted strongly. Those who benefit from them are powerless, and the state and state institutions are not asserting these norms. And so we have to find more complex ways of achieving growth, but without sacrificing these constitutional norms. I think I may have, it's 1:30, is 15 minutes beyond what I wanted and where you said. But I don't know is there anything I have not answered, anyone has asked? I think it's 1:30. So
I think it's only a beginning.
If anyone says,
It's only a
yes,
beginning.
if anyone says yes, they'll be very unpopular. If anyone says that I have to say something more.
I think, sir, I think we'll conclude.
Yes,
I think
yes,
I
thank you
must
so
say that your depth, of the problem, views and conscience and constitution, the manner in which you articulated and presented the whole problematic, and at the end, you could not have sensitized more. You are an evangelist and you are emotive, in fact. And I thought the commitment and concern for what this country's constitution actually stood for and where we actually stand now, I think you could not have evaluated more. I think really enjoyed. I think you have not enjoyed as much as we have.
I've enjoyed.
So
the
I think
interaction,
I will request my colleague to
yes,
for the formal
wonderful
thanks.
comments from you and the questions. And
Wonderful. Yeah.
wonderful.
Over to you, Dr. Vidya.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, all. Respected Director Professor KG Joseph, Honorable Guest Professor Dr. Mohan Gobal, and dear faculty members and the scholars. It's my proud privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. We are deeply honored to have had Professor Dr. Mohan Gobal, former Director of National Judicial Academy of the Supreme Court of India, and the former Chief Counsel of the Legal Department of the World Bank with us today. So we sincerely thank for delivering such an insightful and thought-provoking lecture on different ways of understanding the Indian Constitution, the challenge for public finance. Your lecture provided us with the profound understanding of the Indian Constitution from the multiple perspective, highlighting what its close relationship between the economic policy and the constitutional values. Your vast experience, academic experience, and practical insights have inspired us to look beyond the conventional interpretations and appreciate the Constitution as a living document that continues to shape the economic policies and economic public institutions and financial decision making. The way sir explained the framework of the Constitution is really beautiful. You had for every concept, the perspective was very different. Everything was very positive. And as your teacher said, you have shown everything in the positive way. That the reforms in the religious motion, that is very, very important. That I didn't hear that perspective anywhere. Especially this Gen Alpha and Gen C and Gen Alpha, they don't want to follow the toxic religious practices. So the reforms has to be done and has to be promoted. And on behalf of all the participants in GIFT, I extend our heartfelt gratitude for sparing your valuable time and sharing your wisdom, knowledge with us. We are truly grateful for your presence and this for enriching interactions. I also express my sincere thanks to our director, KJ Joseph, and the seminar coordinators of the GIFT for organizing this distinguished lecture and providing us with this valuable learning opportunity. My appreciation also goes to all the participants for their enthusiastic presence and active engagement, which made today's session meaningful and interactive. Finally, I thank everyone who worked behind the scenes to ensure the smooth conduct of this program. Once again, Professor Dr. Mohan Gopal, thank you for your inspiring lecture. We hope to have the privilege of inviting you to the GIFT in the very future. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for very nice questions and for being such patient listeners. Thank you so much.